Prospector News is media for educational purposes only and should not be construed as advice. We are not a certified financial analyst, licensed broker, or fund dealer, exempt market dealer, or hold a license to provide financial advice. We provide no legal opinion regarding accounting, tax, or law issues. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as investment advice or the solicitation to buy or sell stocks or commodities. All opinions expressed are those of the participants and should not be relied upon when making investment decisions. Those decisions should be made with the advice of a personal financial advisor. If you have enjoyed our podcast, please hit the like and share buttons and be sure to hit subscribe. I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector News Podcast. And I'm happy to have a friend joining me today, the President and CEO of BacTech Environmental, Ross Orr. Welcome, Ross.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
Wonderful. For those of the listeners that aren't familiar with BacTech, let's give them the elevator pitch from 30,000 feet as to what the company is and what you do.
Well, we're a commercially proven technology, which is bioleaching, meaning we get nature to do the work that would normally be done by smelters and roasters. And obviously we do it in an environmental fashion. It's a hydrometallurgical process versus pyrometallurgical. And we chase arsenic, which pretty well leaves the market wide open for us.
Wonderful. Now you've got a plant under construction in Ecuador, is that correct?
Well, we've got a project under construction. We basically took samples from 5 mines in an area that has about 90 mines. And we took those concentrates that they produced and we did a 6-month bioleach study on it. And we got recoveries of 96% of the gold and effectively tied up 100% of the arsenic as a ferric arsenate, which is a US EPA landfillable form of arsenic. And so with the results of that, we engaged a engineering company called EPCM, who did a bankable feasibility study for us. We didn't have to bother, but there's nothing underground here, Mike. Everything's on surface. So it's really more of a feasibility study for an industrial plant. This industrial plant just happens to use bacteria to liberate gold and stabilize arsenic. So right now, after the results came out of the bankable feasibility study, which were exceptional. I mean, at today's prices, our cash flow is about 14 million US. Our capex is $17 million. So very rapid payback on this. Right now, we're in the middle of the detailed engineering. So putting all the nuts and bolts together to see, how the plant will be designed. So we hope that by late this year, we'll be in the position to start building the plant.
Well, that'll be good news. Now, most of those mines you're referring to, those are small artisanal miners, correct?
They're anywhere from 1 ton a day to 350 tons a day. It all just depends on, we just call them the small miners. These aren't necessarily the guys who climb into rabbit holes and scratch and claw for a living. They actually, most of these guys have, crushing, grinding, not necessarily flotation, but they ship their ore to to one of their neighbors for flotation. And that's all we're interested in. We just want to buy the concentrates that are produced. And what's happened for this project, which is really where it got a real shot in the arm, was last October 1st. Most of this concentrate goes to China, or has been going to China. And the miners were getting paid sort of 65 to 70 cents on the dollar for the gold value. The Chinese government imposed an import tax on high arsenic gold concentrates last October of 13%. So now these miners are down getting less than 50% on their dollar for the gold they produce. And so it just fell into our lap because we're going to go back and pay them what they were getting before. They were very happy with that. And so that's, I mean, literally, I felt like the Pied Piper the last time I was in Ponce Enriquez because everybody was chasing me saying, you have to process my concentrates for me because I'm getting very little from the Chinese. So yeah, it's a nice position to be in, really, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And the plant will be scale out. You'll be able to upscale the plant to be able to accommodate more and more, right?
Yes, it's modular. So we can add, and that's probably what we will do, is once we flip the switch on this 50-ton-a-day plant, which is going to produce roughly 31,000 ounces a year of gold. The market in that area is up to 250 tons a day. So we can add 200 without disrupting the 50. And I think what we'll do then is we'll probably designate 200 for the miners, and 50 tons will go towards reprocessing a lot of the tailings that are in the area that run anywhere from sort of 2 to 6 grams per ton.
Basically good news all around for everybody. It seems to me like it's kind of like fair trade coffee. You're getting fair trade gold without the environmental impact out of it.
Yeah, and again, as I said, we were discussing before, nobody complains when you're cleaning something up. So the permitting process has gone very well. I mean, Ecuador's broke. They have no money, but they have a lot of resources. And so Lasso, the president, has reached out to the people and said, look, the only way we can get out of this mess is to start developing our resources, but we have to do it obviously in a sustainable or environmental fashion, which kind of makes us a bit of a poster boy down there, really, because we come riding over the hill with our white hat on and say, hey, we're going to clean up all the tailings here. And then we found out about the mines, and then we said, well, let's do the mines. And that way we're not dumping stuff into the rivers, because right now the rivers flow south to Peru and they're pretty polluted. I mean, there's a lot of mercury and arsenic and cyanide, et cetera. Our mandate in that area is to the miner, if you pre-treat these concentrates with mercury or cyanide, we're just not buying them from you. So it forces them to deliver, a cleaner approach themselves, which is terrific. I mean, it's for their own benefit at the end of the day anyways.
Good. Where else in the world are you looking at putting in plants?
Did a trip down to Peru, got COVID. It wasn't fun. Back in January, and we looked at copper, gold, more energite material. We actually did a demonstration plan many years ago with Peñoles on chalcopyrite copper and produced, we bioleached it and then electrowind. We were producing 99.99 copper. We've never used the technology. It's never sort of arisen. Well, we went down to Peru. We were meeting miners that were mining 8% copper and 8% arsenic in the rock. And so this obviously got our attention because the gold grades were still, anywhere from 3 to 8 grams as well. So very, very high grade material. We met one guy who his rock was worth $500 a ton, and the Chinese were paying him $80 because of the arsenic. And so even if we moved him up to 50 or 60%, he's at 15 right now. So that's probably the next phase we'll go to, and it'll be different because it'll have copper gold as opposed to just gold and silver like Ecuador. And I guess Colombia is probably eventually on the dance card as well. But you gotta walk before you run. And right now we're walking to get that 50-ton-a-day plant up because it's going to change our life dramatically with just cash flow. I mean, instead of having to tap the markets all the time, especially with our stock, our market cap being only $20 million.
Yeah, no, you don't want to continue to dilute, but that's going to be the nice thing. You should be having cash flow pretty soon, given the permitting and the above ground nature of the project.
Yeah, I hope that the royalty companies are watching us closely. I mean, I understand their reticence to finance us because they want to grab something if something goes wrong. They can always grab a property that's got a resource on it. With us, they really don't want to buy a leach plant. That's of no use to them. But there has to be a way to structure a deal where these guys can tap into what we're doing because our margins are 30% all day long. And right now, it's like anything. It's like the first guy who did a royalty, the Franco guys many years ago. It was a leap of faith. They did it, and look at the industry now. Now there's tons of them out there. So we just trying to find that group that is willing to step up and sort of say, look, we'll take that risk of putting up, the debt side in the form of a royalty. Because I said, our margins are terrific.
Definitely. Now, last week you came out with a pretty spectacular news release about a brand new patent for the nickel and iron industries. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's actually, if you can believe it or not, we actually did pyrrhotite. Now, pyrrhotite is a sulphide mineral that is full of iron and very volatile. I mean, it'll combust, under the right conditions in the tailings. So most of them are underwater. And it was mined as a byproduct, really, of the pentlandite that they were mining. I'm talking Inco and Falconbridge. They would dispose of the pyrrhotite because, again, it was very volatile. The iron was an issue when it came to smelting, and so they just dumped these things. But there's probably I've heard anywhere from 70 to 100 million tons of pyrrhotite tailings grading 0.8% nickel in the Sudbury Basin. And that also comes with cobalt and copper. And they're mostly owned by Vale and by Glencore. So all we did was we dusted off a paper that was written back in 1999, where we bioleached pyrrhotite at a mine called Radio Hill in Australia. And it was literally a 1 year long, demonstration plant. The problem then was that nickel was $5,000 a ton. Today it's 30. And what do you do with all this iron? It was a cost. And what we've done is we've said, okay, what can we do to that iron to use it as a credit? And Paul Miller, our BioLeach guy, has filed this patent that effectively will strip out sulfur, elemental sulfur for sale. It'll strip out precipitate out a nickel cobalt sulfate. It'll produce an iron product that will marry to something that will then go and hopefully be sold into the steel business as an input for iron. And don't forget, Algoma is just to the west on the rail line. So it's a kind of a great place to be snooping around. Dr. Nadia Mikachik, who is on our advisory board and is Canada's probably best known biomining academic, will be running a pilot plant that she's been trying to build now for the last few years, getting very close to it. I understand the tanks are being made right now. And that will be the source, or that'll be the location of this bioleach work that we're going to do for pyrrhotite. It's pretty exciting. I mean, it's a huge market. I mean, you're talking $15 billion worth of nickel sitting there already.
Now we're talking up in the Sudbury region of Ontario, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. The whole Sudbury Basin.
Where else might this be applicable once proven there?
Well, I think, again, probably back at Radio Hill, you could probably go back to those tailings in Australia. Again, it's the sort of sulfide that we go after that nobody else wants. And that creates a lot of opportunity for you because you're not competing with a lot of people. I always say we're the only nuts that go looking for arsenic, and because of that, it puts us in a great position because I said, we're not competing against anybody. So the answer to that, Mike, is I don't really know. I mean, we're going to be in Sudbury for a long time, assuming this technology pans out. Past my life. It takes
quite a while to get through $15 billion and that's billion with a B, dollars worth of ore to process, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, find me Elon Musk's phone number. I should be talking to him.
Yeah, you can check with Twitter. He might be there. Now, the government of Canada in the last budget set aside a substantial amount of money for green tech and mining. Is this an opportunity for the company to tap into those funds?
Oh, definitely. And that's Nadia's job. I mean, she's great at it. I find it very confusing and not knowing which levers to pull, but she's been doing it because she's in academia. This is what they do. They live off grants and donations from various governments, Ontario or Canada or whatever. So she's basically, I'm sure she's already talking to them now about money for her pilot plant, which, which we will contribute to as well. There's a gentleman named Felix Lopes up in Sudbury who owns the old Falconbridge smelter site and all the slag and everything. And he wants to develop a sort of a mineral technology center with one of the 4 legs being bioleaching. And that's probably where this pilot plant's going to go to start, so that we can use, that to progress the technology to the next stage. And again, that won't be the big plant. That'll be the demonstration plant phase. I mean, for us though, the key is, we know who owns all the tailings. So obviously we have to talk to them at some point in time as well. It would be nice if we could do something together to co-develop it, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, the tailings are just sitting there with no economic value currently. You would think they would like to turn that into dollars.
Well, and you got to believe they probably got some pretty heavy reclamation bonds against it as well.
Yeah, no doubt. In the past, those reclamation bonds are sometimes enough to bankrupt companies, although these ones are pretty huge. So
yeah, they are, exactly.
Wonderful. What else today haven't we covered that investors and everybody should know about what you're doing and the road forward?
Well, I think going back to we were talking about royalties. We initiated a financing. I can tell you it was 4 days before the war broke out in the Ukraine, where we designed a unit financing at 20 cents, which was a bit cheeky because we were trading about 13 or 14. But we were frustrated that the results of our feasibility study didn't give us more traction in the marketplace. So we designed a financing with a share and a warrant and a royalty. Retail investors don't normally get access to royalties unless they buy the royalty companies themselves. So we said a 20-cent unit was a share and a warrant at 30 cents for 2 years and a 0.5% royalty for every $1 million we raised. Well, I can tell you the thing was so oversubscribed over the weekend that by Monday morning, we had $5 million committed, and then a war broke out and we ended up closing on $1.2 million. We will close on more shortly. Because we're trading below that 20 cents, we can leave this open as long as we want. And all that money goes towards the equity portion of the plant. We've got to probably put up 30% equity in the plant, which is about 6 million US against, 11 to 12 million in debt on the other side. So the other things that I'm working on right now, of course, are talking to various groups about financing the debt side of the project as well. And it's so new to them that it's a little hard for them to get their head wrapped around it, but you can't argue with the numbers. The numbers are there. And not our numbers, somebody else did them. It was an independent feasibility study. So, it's the position you're in a market where nobody's getting a lot of love for anything. Most of the gold exploring companies that I look at are down and all trading near their lows. It's frustrating. And you got gold at $2,000. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's as somebody who's invested in the market and disclosure to the audience, I participated in that private placement that Ross is referring to. Yeah, it's frustrating. You look and go like these companies should have like a huge valuation compared to where they are in the marketplace, your company included, and it's not there. But I look at it this way, if I'm going into Walmart, I'm looking for the stuff that's on sale, not the stuff that's I'm going to pay full price for. So I look at it as a buying opportunity. But again, this is not investment advice.
Yeah, and I think the reality for us is, we're trying to get to the goal line with as little dilution as possible. The day we flip that switch, or even the day we announce the debt financing, that's when things will come together for us. And that's when people say, okay, this is real, it's going to happen. I think people now can sort of see the grand scheme of things, but they don't understand the time frames and everything else that has to be, you have to live with to get to that goal line. Our goal is to be producing by the end of the first quarter in next year, in 2023. So, 10 months from now, be lovely.
Yeah, no, for someone who looks at mining stocks, that kind of a timeline is, it's a dream for somebody.
Yeah. And then the expansion probably could be put together in 18 months because you've done all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, it's always easier to expand something than to build it from scratch. So
exactly.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you very much for your time today, and we'll look forward to the progress of the project in Ecuador and the progress of the new technology in Sudbury.
And don't forget we're looking at rare earths as well. Again, we've done that already. In arsenopyrite are rare earths, and the concentrations are just not enough, so they tend to just pass through the process. But putting rare earths into solution is what we can do. That's another sort of leg on the stool for us.
Wonderful. Till next time. Thanks, Ross.
Cheers. Bye.
BacTech Environmental is a paid subscriber to the Prospector News. The host of the show owns shares, warrants, and royalties in BacTech Environmental purchased at the market for investment purposes.